AITA for trying to send my deaf daughter to a school that won't hire an interpreter? I am not the original poster. Original post by you, AITA throwing in R, am I the asshole? Reminder: do not comment on linked posts. Trigger warnings. Ableism. Less than. Mood spoilers. Frustration. Best possible ending for Oop and her daughter. Less than. An NBSP. #A.I.T.A. for trying to send my deaf daughter to a school that won't hire an interpreter? Wed. December 30th, 2020. Original post was deleted, so the date for this post is the re-upload date. Samai, 34F. Daughter, 6F. Is deaf. We adopted her 3 years ago from China. When she first came home we tried to teach her both sign and speech, but it was clear ASL was the best form of communication for her. We hadn't put her in preschool because she didn't have much communication, but she started kindergarten this year. There is a private school that all my other kids and my sister's kids go to. She had to take a test to get in and passed, but they said that because there was a deaf school within an hour of where we live, they wouldn't provide any accommodations. So either we have to pay for an interpreter or send her to the deaf school. But the deaf school we live near is only for children with hearing aids and sees and teaches speech. And has actually banned sign language. I think speech can definitely help deaf children, but it depends on the individual child. Some speak, some sign, some do both. But my daughter communicates best with sign language, which is why we don't want to send her there. Since this is a private school, I don't think they have to follow the disability guidelines that public schools do. Currently my daughter's doing online school at the local public school, who have provided an interpreter. But the education there is horrible. I sent my oldest son there in kindergarten and first grade and he never learned anything. Aware that you don't learn much in kindergarten and first grade, but they didn't even teach them how to read. I had to do that myself. Another reason I want to send her to the private school is because from prec and up the kids can choose to learn ASL, Spanish or French, so she may be able to communicate with some other kids there. She has had a few playdates with other kids in the area who go there and took ASL, and they were able to communicate pretty well, whereas in the public school she would be completely isolated and only able to communicate with the interpreter. I have been constantly emailing with this private school trying to see if there is any other way to get my daughter in without having to pay for the interpreter myself. My brother thinks that if the school doesn't want her, why should I keep pushing for her to get in? But I just want the best education possible for my daughter, and I want my daughter to be able to be social and make friends. AITA? Should I just let it go and keep her in public school, or should I keep trying to get my daughter into this school? Judgment. Not the a-hole. An NBSP. #UPDATE. AITA for trying to send my deaf daughter to a school that won't hire an interpreter? Mon. January 25th, 2021. Thank you all for your advice on my last post. I wasn't aware of all the laws about this kind of thing. For those of you who didn't read the up, basically my 6-year-old daughter is deaf and communicates using ASL. There is a public school near us, but it's very bad and the whole district has a rating of 1.55 stars. All of our other children go to a private school near us. But the private school said they wouldn't pay for an interpreter because there is a deaf school in our county. But the deaf school only teaches speech and no sign language, so we decided not to send her there. We also wanted her to go to the private school because there was a language option for ASL, so she may be able to communicate with other classmates. But my brother said that we shouldn't push trying to get her in. If the school doesn't want her, we should just give up. Most people said to hire a lawyer. My husband decided to contact his brother, who is a disability lawyer. Although he specializes in wheelchair accessibility, he was willing to take our case. We discussed the situation over the phone with him, and then he reached out to the private school. He emailed back and forth with the school. We're not sure what was said exactly, but by the end of it, not only did the school agree to pay for the interpreter, but they also provided a free scholarship and let us request which teacher she had, which they didn't let us do for any of our other kids. There is a kindergarten teacher who knows some ASL, so we chose to be in her class. I'm not sure exactly why they did this, but I think it's probably because denying entry to a kindergartner just because she's deaf would not look so good if other people found out. But I'm not complaining. She started 2 weeks ago and she loves it. They are doing hybrid. She is able to make friends and talk to other kids, though in kinda broken sign language. Her interpreter is very nice and will update us on how she did every day, unlike the interpreter she had when she was in public school. Her teacher also tried to sign when she's speaking as much as possible, and so do some of the kids. Overall, I'm so happy this happened, and I wouldn't have known there was anything I could do about it until I asked on here. So thank all of you who replied to the op and told me they do have to provide an interpreter for her. Edit. My pronouns are she, her. I'm not sure why everyone's referring to me as a male, but just wanted to let you all know. Edit 2. To everyone concerned as to why my Bill is a disability lawyer, but I came to Reddit first. We barely talked to Bill. He's my husband's half-brother, and there is a 16-year age gap, so they aren't close. And at the time when I first posted, I didn't think I could do anything legally, so I didn't even think of talking to my Bill. I was just concerned if I was being too pushy, which is why I came to this sub rather than legal advice. Hope that clears some things up. An NBSP reminder: I am not the original poster. Any school for the deaf that only teaches speech gets a suspicious look from me. Very glad that OP was able to get the accommodations that will let her daughter stay at an ASL teaching school with her siblings. WTF kind of school for the deaf doesn't allow sign language? That's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. I'm glad the school realized a scholarship and interpreter would be way cheaper than lawyer costs and a settlement. How is it possible that a public school won't teach kids how to read? The deaf school sounds pretty ableist, and that's a sentence I wish I've never had to say. So OP has a disabled child who was being discriminated against, and their brother-in-law happens to be a lawyer specializing in disability. But they posted to Reddit instead of having a conversation with him. Seems legit. Why would a school that has ASL as an elective not provide an ASL interpreter to its student? As for the other school banning ASL, I have no words. I'm still stuck on the fact that a deaf school has banned sign language. What do they expect the kids to do here? For everyone talking about how the deaf school is speech only, look into the 1880 Milan Conference and Alexander Graham Bell. I can't imagine having a deaf child and not knowing all accessibility laws off by heart. Me. Reading the title. Yes. Do I even need to read it? Me after the first few paragraphs. Okay, so this is a horrible school system. This story is missing so much information, very bizarre. I'm glad it worked out in the end though. I am confused. A school for disabled kids who doesn't want sign language. A school where learning how to read it's impossible. And the Bill who is by some miracles a lawyer for disabled people. I didn't hear any clap. Weird. The kid's uncle just happened to be a disability lawyer. But they didn't think of contacting him until Reddit suggested it? Oop is correct about the laws concerning private schools. They can do just about anything they want, don't need to follow many of the government guidelines a public school needs to follow. The legal method wouldn't have worked, but the public shaming method does wonders. My husband decided to contact his brother, who is a disability lawyer. Although he specializes in wheelchair accessibility, he was willing to take our case. Why wasn't this their first step instead of turning to Reddit? I mean, sure, they aren't close, but honestly, he's a very experienced disability lawyer and likely would defend his disabled niece. My earliest contact with a deaf person was through pen and paper. I was 10/11 and thought it cool. Then I worked with a deaf woman in the 80s. She was fine face to face, where she modulated her voice and lip read, but she tended to shout on the telephone. We both moved to neighboring offices over 100 miles away from where we originally worked, so stayed in contact. Having someone we knew meant neither of us felt too lonely. We both had the same driving test examiner, who had a full beard, and she complained because he mumbled and she couldn't read his lips. She got a free retest and passed. He didn't mumble, but he did have a strong local accent. I do know how to fingerspell, but tend to rely on pen and notepad with deaf people I don't know well. With my friend, I knew to look at her and to clearly enunciate my words. I now have another friend with a cochlear implant, and I never realized that she was deaf, and often forget. So, Op had a choice of 3 schools. School for the deaf, public school, or private school. SFTD won't teach sign language, which is child's preferred language. Public school isn't highly rated enough for Op. No, it has to be private school. What is tuition here? Is it a day school? Probably $1,518,000. Now what does a full-time interpreter cost? $3,640,000? Op, I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad your child is doing well. But please make sure that you thank every day all the other parents for subsidizing your child to go to this school. Not only paying full tuition, but for the interpreter's salary as well, in order to avoid a lawsuit. This isn't spread amongst general taxpayers, but paid solely by other parents who may be scrapping by in order to send their own children to a good school. I don't understand people sometimes. When you have a bill who is a disability lawyer, why would your first stop be Reddit? Like, if you don't want to mix money and family is short, hey, can you refer an XYZ lawyer? Is not a crazy ask. I'm so glad that you have a happy ending. You sound like a great mom.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.